Hello and welcome to YPO Presents Ask the Experts. I'm Rochelle Pattison, a principal and founder at Chimaera Capital Limited. And today I'm very privileged to be joined by two amazing leaders and allies, Charles Knippen and Heather Hester, to celebrate Pride Month and discuss the joys and challenges of the LGBTQ plus experience in families and communities. Welcome, Charles and Heather. Can you
Rochelle.
each introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your role? Heather, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Like Rochelle said, I am Heather Hester. I am on the YPO Parenting Network Board and the vice chair of the LGBTQIA plus families subnetwork. I am also the creator and host of the podcast Just Breathe, Parenting Your LGBTQ Teen, as well as a parenting coach.
Thanks, Heather. Charles?
Yes, Rochelle, thanks for having me here. I'm Charles Knippen. I recently made a transition out of my YPO organization. It was called the National Society of Leadership and Success. We provide leadership programming for over 700 colleges, serving over 1.5 million students across the country here in the United States. Recently sold my equity to my business partner and now active in the LGBTQ forum here within the YPO organization.
Thank you, Heather and Charles. For those of you who don't know, YPO is a global leadership community of more than 30,000 chief executives in more than 142 countries, driven by the shared belief that the world needs better leaders. One of the benefits of being a YPO member is the opportunity to join YPO networks, which are virtual communities that connect members around a common interest, creating deeper relationships through virtual and global reach. I'm the current network chair and member of the LGBTQ Family Members, Allies and Advocates networks, which increases awareness within YPO and the wider community of the unique challenges faced by rainbow families. We do this through the sharing of stories and education. The network's best-in-class programming resources from global peer networks, professional and academic community, helps members engage in open, frank discussions in safe environments, and hopefully provides informative and educational events. We also offer peer support for all families to thrive. Today, we're going to sit back and feature the experiences and perspectives of parents navigating the challenges and joys of being an LGBTQ parent or raising an LGBTQ child, and to reframe what pride means in 2022 and beyond. Before we get started, we'd like to remind you, all of you watching live, that you can ask our guests questions by posting them in the comments section below, and we'll answer them as time permits. Now, let's stop hearing from me and get on with the show. Let's get started by sharing how you define pride and what it means to you and your family. Charles, can we start with you? Has it changed over time? And do you and your children define it differently?
Well, I have to tell you that the journey to even having pride for me began almost 25 years ago. That word pride actually started as a kid growing up in rural Ohio from a very conservative background who still remembers the first time that, as I was becoming aware of who I was as a member of the LGBTQ community, but still being very closeted. I still remember the first time someone that I knew to be gay reaching out and putting their hand just on my shoulder and having a adverse reaction to it, that going, I was so deep in the closet and not knowing who I was and afraid of it. So pride wasn't even part of my vocabulary at that point as a 16-year-old kid growing up in rural Ohio. Fast forward and going through the coming out process and meeting my now husband and being together now for almost 24 years. And in that process and in this journey together, we've been foster parents. And so we fostered 8 children over the time frame of 5 years together at different times, some for as little as 2 to 3 weeks and others for a year and a half. And in that journey and in being LGBTQ parents, pride really started taking a new meaning for us in being confident in who we were. And so that these children that were coming into our homes could be confident. And now that we've adopted 2 children, Leah and Michael, who are 9 and 10, now Pride is a celebration. And for us, it's even more important now because we live in Orlando, Florida, and we are a mile away from the Pulse nightclub, where the tragic shooting happened 6 years ago, and 49 people who identified in the LGBTQ and ally community were killed for being who they were. And so just 2 weeks ago, we ran in the memorial race for Pulse, and that word pride. I mean, whether you're wearing rainbows or whether you are just being who you are and living out loud, that is the evolution from that rural kid back in Ohio to today, to being able to stand with my family and to be able to have a family and to be proud of who we are and trying to be the best people that we can be in our community and for our community. So Pride, big difference between then and now for me, Rochelle.
Yeah, I think my journey mirrors yours as well. For so long being in the closet and then slowly progressing out, and now really being proud of who we are and fighting some of the internal stuff. Heather, you've been very open about your family's journey. I'm sure that your view of pride has changed a lot. How do you define pride now, and how has this changed for you and your children?
Well, I think I'll start with how I used to define it and then how I define it now. I never had a negative or a bad definition. I was just neutral. And that's I've become very aware of that in recent years as my oldest came out almost 6 years ago. And the journey that he had and has and is still on, and the journey that we've had with him has been so extraordinary, from being just really low, self-harming, suicidal attempt, self-loathing, and really watching him go through what I now understand to be his process, but watching the pain and really understanding that, this is not a choice, that this is who this kid was born to be, and watching him really step into his authentic self and to see him just blossom as a parent. I mean, there's nothing like that. No matter, whether your kid is LGBTQIA or not, watching your child blossom into their authentic self is quite extraordinary. And this is just a kind of a special extra layer for us. So my broad definition now is that it's a celebration. I mean, it really is. Every single year, it's more and more of a celebration. It's really, like I said, realizing loving who one is authentically. It's brave. And I see that every single day. And it's just this celebration of growth and love. So for me, it's very emotional. Clearly, it's very joyous. It is obviously very different as I am the parent of an LGBTQIA child. But it is just extraordinary having watched him and been with him through where he is on his journey now. And yes, my kids definitely view it differently than I do. One, because they're all Gen Z teenagers and they view everything differently. And two, because for two of them, it's deeply personal.
That's really important. I think the internal issues that need to be set aside is a good reason for why we have pride, and it's not just all the broader, but there's all amongst the broader celebrations, there's still some fairly serious issues facing the LGBTQ community. We all parents, all three of us, so we should have a special focus on youth of who And the youth really do still face challenges navigating their identity and their sexuality. You know, there are the peer group, it's still not a fully acknowledged, journey, or not always a safe space, and they're subject to bullying and things. These factors do contribute to a higher rate of mental health issue, self-harm, and increased risk of suicide. How can families, schools, and businesses help address this crisis? And what steps can be taken to increase acceptance and keep the youth safe? Charles, it's such a simple question. I'll flip across to you.
Yeah, it's so simple, Rochelle. And you look back at your own experience. Again, when I reflect back on that 16-year-old version of myself and going through many of those challenges and not feeling positive about myself, and there are great resources out there like the Trevor Project, which is a suicide prevention line for the LGBTQ community, and organizations like that that are stepping forward to provide an avenue. Because again, what I think happens for most of these children, and for myself even at that age, is that you feel alone. You feel like you don't have someone to connect with about this very personal part of your own life journey. And I think as much as social media has created small communities that can have hate, at the same time, it also gives an opportunity for kids to connect with other kids who are going through that same experience together, and to give them strength, to give them courage to live their authentic selves. And so when you ask the question, what can schools do? What can families do? I think, and Heather, I just want to say kudos and thank you for supporting your son, because that means the world. That foundation starts there. And and if you're supporting him or them, it is important that they know that their community, your family community, your friend community is also supporting them, and having those candid conversations and answering the awkward questions that your friends and family are going to ask. I think it is getting off of that bench and just instead of being neutral, and actually advocating for your child. That is the thing that I would recommend the most for families. What they can do to support that child who's going through this experience is get off the bench. Don't be neutral. Be an advocate. People are going to have questions, and the more that you are willing to talk about it, the more people are going to feel comfortable in having those addressed, and that's how we create change. And then for schools, we're very fortunate that our school, unfortunate from the stance of being in Florida, where they just passed the Don't Say Gay bill that impacts our 9-year-old son. But there's so much ambiguity in that. But we're very fortunate that in our school, it is very supportive, that our teachers go out of their way to address both of us, that they, it goes down to that very personal experience of teacher by teacher, the administrators, and just, again, getting off that bench and not just being neutral, but actually being allies, and addressing it and talking about the families, all different kinds of families in the classroom, really starts in that early age, elementary age bracket, and has really meant the world for us and our children's school experience.
I think that's really important comments there. Heather, what's your view on this?
Well, I first want to say, I think that, Charles, you had a couple of things just right on the nose, and really made that quite easy for people, because I think a really big question is how can I be a good ally, and how can I help? How can I be supportive? And it is those little things, like teachers just being that one-on-one, those really special connections. It is those little things that may seem little, but they're not, right? So I love that you said that. And I think that is so important. On a larger scale, I think there is just a serious lack of education, and kind of conversely, a huge amount of misinformation that is out there. And so this is something that all three, families, schools, and businesses, can go after. The question is, how do we do it, right? So we need schools across the country that are, safe and supportive. We really need to, and I, again, love that you've mentioned the Trevor Project, because I love them so much. But there are other great organizations out there that have, they are in the community, but they are all the way up to the national level. So it's they're easy to tap into kind of wherever you are, like PFLAG, like Gilson, they're an organization who actually works specifically with schools to create, to educate and to create those safe spaces that our kids need. There are awesome podcasts out there, and there are businesses, social workers, coaches, people like that work either one-on-one with families to help, who consult with groups, including schools and businesses and that type of thing. In the home, families, one of the things that you can really do to be a great ally to support your child is to have conversations that may include questions that you may not have the answer for right away, that may be uncomfortable. And that's okay. It's always okay to say, I don't know the answer to that. I really want to talk about this. Let's figure this out together. Having conversations about the importance of including everyone. Even kindergartners can understand this concept. So this is something that's very easy to talk about. And really, I know we all see this, that these things start at home. Things start within the family, that we can have these conversations about the fact that everyone is different. Every single one of us is an individual and different in some beautiful way. And we can encourage that and talk about that in a very positive way. Or we can instill that fear of difference. And
I think that's so important. We've got to demonstrate as adults that we're open to these concepts and we're ready to have the conversations.
Right. Exactly.
Now, of course, Pride Month is often derided as the celebration of rainbows and festival of consumerism. So let's talk about the business of pride, because consumers today want to patronize businesses that align with their values. And every June, we see more and more businesses roll out campaigns and products that celebrate the LGBTQ experience. How do we take these, do we think these are empty gestures or simply rainbow washing? How can businesses and business leaders move beyond just rainbows, your drag queen at a party, and truly make a difference in supporting LGBT communities? Charles, we'll kick off with you again.
I think I'm very close to this one, given that was just running my company, and we're a very small organization. We had only 100 employees, but the first thing about what businesses can do is they can create the environment for their employees and the benefits that they provide. Whether that was when marriage equality wasn't legal yet, but there were spouse protections that you could have in providing health insurance. Those were progressive 10 years ago in terms of having a same-sex partner being able to be on your health insurance and providing that as a benefit for your company or for your employees. Being very close to this also in Florida, you see what happened with Disney and what happened in them not having a firm stance in where they were in what was going on in the state of Florida with the Don't Say Gay bill. And neither side was happy with the outcome of how they presented themselves. So my suggestion there to business leaders is get your executive team together, figure out where do you stand on this issue, and make sure your actions follow that North Star that you're creating when it comes down to LGBTQ issues and opportunities to support the community. Because with Disney, the side that they were going, the side wasn't happy with that. They were in support of it and didn't say enough against the Don't Say Gay bill. And then when they finally did come around, it wasn't, the other side wasn't happy. And so again, there was an opportunity there for them to really be more firm in understanding what their position was, to be consistent with that and to be clear on that. So I think, again, taking care of your employees, and then second, from an outward standpoint, making sure that your messaging is consistent and that you're advocating in a consistent way as an organization, as a company. And then also from a political standpoint, making sure you're supporting candidates with your monetary contributions that support equality for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, so it's not just for 1 month. It's something to be kept throughout. Heather?
Yeah. Well, I really can't add a whole lot to that. That was a perfect answer. That was really great. The only thing I guess I would add is from maybe a consumer point of view, because I think that's a question that consumers have, is when we're looking to purchase, right? If we want to purchase something for Pride Month or to wear all 12 months of the year, right? How do we know if purchasing from our favorite company, we get 1,000 emails in June, right? How do we know if they actually support LGBTQ people and policies and all of these things that you just talked about? So I have just been, there's, I think, a couple of answers for that are very basic. One is you can always look on the website. A lot of these websites will give details of the companies that they do support, like where they do actually donate their money or policies they're supporting and those type of things. You can also reverse engineer it. And if you, for instance, I'll use Trevor Project again, because they're very good at doing this. They list on their website the companies who support them. So they're saying, hey, it's okay for you to go ahead and buy products from them and get your rainbow t-shirt or whatever you're wanting to get because these guys are good. So that's the only thing I would add.
Yeah, I think being an aware consumer always helps. Thought we'd change things up a little bit and just divert into a bit more of an amusing thing is, if we look at which Pride advocate would you like to have dinner with and why? Heather.
I love this question. I actually was sharing this question with my husband earlier, and he was like, "Oh, you have to say Lady Gaga." So that's his choice.
That was mine.
My husband,
Too stereotypical.
I know. I was like, seriously, come on. I mean, great. I love her, but okay.
Right.
My answer is Glennon Doyle. And if I could have two, I would take Glennon and her wife, Abby, out for dinner, because I absolutely love her as an author. I love her as a podcast host. And I just think that she has, I think conversation with both of them, but with Glennon would be she just shares with such transparency and warmth and wisdom, but she's also just fierce. So that's why I would choose her.
And she's had such an amazing journey herself.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, I think it's extraordinary. So, yeah.
Yep. Charles, Lady Gaga?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would have lunch with Lady Gaga any day. But I think for me, it would be Harvey Milk. When having the exposure I did a few years ago when the movie came out, and I think it was Sean Penn in the lead role, that it told a story that I knew of him. I did not understand the perfectly imperfect person that he was, but more importantly, what he really was able to harness in a movement and to get things moving in a positive direction for the LGBTQ community. And I just look at that and just how brave, how much courage that person had at a time frame when there's literally so much oppression. I mean, cops coming in and busting down the bars, and arresting people for just being themselves, for expressing their LGBTQ community, selves, and that he was willing to stand up and able to pull together a community, and then unfortunately, tragically die. I think that he has cemented for me that one person can create so much change and can create a movement that we get to enjoy the benefits of, all this time later.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we need to remember is that we live in privileged societies where we're able to exist. However, the large majority of the population are still in those situations of being oppressed and or actively discriminated against. With the controversy on the recent FINA decision, you ran down the membership list and realized actually close to half the delegates, being transgender was illegal in their country. So no wonder they were going to vote against the resolution. But yeah, just digressing there for a bit of personal. We've got a question from one of our viewers. Please discuss thoughts on a child who prefers pronouns she, they, where there are more places they are not comfortable using they. They're having a tricky time using they enough, but when I use them, she starts to feel guilty because it's inconvenient socially. The non-binary is certainly a tricky element of gender identity at the moment, but I think it's something we're getting more used to. Heather, I might start with you.
I thought you might.
Yeah.
Because this is a great question. And I will tell you that I have a child who uses she, they, he. Very tricky. I completely understand where you can get tripped up on this. I think the biggest thing, first of all, don't feel guilty because you're trying. And that is so huge. So huge. What I have started to do with my child is just really asking kind of specific situations, because they prefer they at school and they prefer she at home. And so it's having these, like, asking, and it may feel messy and uncomfortable, but it is kind of an opportunity to have those great conversations where you can be like, I'm trying, and I love you and I support you, but I need some more guidance on what you're wanting. And that's okay to do.
Yeah. Yep. Charles?
I just want to recognize this is from Sherry. Sherry, thank you first for even asking this question, and for being in support of your child. It is just, even doing that shows that you are trying to find that place as an advocate, as an ally, and obviously in support of your child. So thank you. The second part of this, I just reemphasize what Heather said, that talk to them, and find out and let them know this is part of your journey as well. Whether you are feeling hesitant, whether you are feeling, like that you need to also step up into your courage, bring them on the journey with you, because I think that will humanize you one more, and going, for a lot of children, they think their parents are perfect up until, they hit that tween stage, and, then it all goes downhill. But anyway, I digress. But it is, depending on their age, they may still, look at you as that ultimate, being, and, really just letting them know that you're human and that you are struggling with this as well, and that you are part of that journey with them, and that you are supporting them and want to meet them where they are. That's going to mean the world to them. And, again, every LGBTQ child just wishes they had that support and communication line with their parent.
Yeah, I think we live in a very binary society. And I think when you're dealing with non-binary children, it can be fairly, just your efforts to be accepting, I think, go a long way in just letting them know that they are valid and they are seen, and we keep working with them. But yeah, working in the transgender community, I come across a lot of non-binary people, and you can't always be perfect on the pronouns. And I think that's important to remember, is we're not looking for perfection. What we're looking for is to make people welcome and included in society, and that's the work that we have to do. Mm-hmm. We have a question from another Carrie. How can business leaders inspire allyship for their employees, and how can they integrate it into their company's culture? This is actually becoming more and more of a trend. Charles, I think you're well placed to talk about this.
Yeah. First is to talk about it. When you are bringing people on as employees and in stating who you are as an organization and that you are in support of the community, it makes a loud statement to them. And I think the second part of that So first is, making sure that it's part of every person's orientation when they come into your organization. The second part of that is that your actions follow that up, similar to what I was sharing before about Disney and, that inconsistency. What are you doing to support not only the LGBTQ community, but what are you doing to support Black Lives Matter? What are you doing to support the Hispanic population, the Asian Americans, hate against Asian Americans, and addressing those? I think that they need to be able to say and see that you are acting in a way that is consistent with that policy, that you are inviting of all diverse communities. And yes, obviously with the LGBTQ community, but also that, there are injustices happening in the world, and a company has to figure out where they want to stand on either side of history on those things. And so I think right now, particularly with Gen Z, I love that the generations are being brought up with the Gen Z population. They want to know who you are as an organization. They want to know what you stand for. And if they don't align with that, they'll go find someone that does. So I think even more so, a job isn't just a way to make money for this generation. It is about making a life, and it's about aligning yourselves with your values and being in a community that supports you. So I think for all those reasons that it's imperative for a company to show its support, demonstrate its support, and be consistent in that support.
I think you raised an interesting point there, Charles, in terms of intersectionality. It's moving more from just being a bit of a buzzword that floats around in one section of the community. And I think it's a challenge faced by us all now. Heather, did you have anything to talk about leaders inspiring allyship?
No, I thought that was a really great answer, and really hitting on that clarity piece, because that is just being clear. And I think it's as helpful for those who are onboarding in your company as it is for those who are leaders in the company to be really clear. So,
and I think when we talk about allyship, it's how do we visibly represent it? How do you both feel about the pronoun signature blocks, and whether that's a useful way of doing it or just a waste? Charles?
I have to admit, this has been a journey for me because I work in education. And so education was at the forefront of this movement, and how amazing and appropriate for that to happen. And so I think the journey for myself was just making myself aware and then turning around and being the leader to say, no, we're putting this in here and we're doing this. And it actually started with some of our employees putting that in their own signature lines, because they were the direct connection with with the colleges, and they really were the ones who brought it to our attention as an executive team. And why not? At the end of the day, why not show that you are supportive and that you are, again, opening a door to someone? You are opening a door to let them know, I see you, and I not just accept you, I embrace your identity. And I think that that's the part that really, again, with a small little signature like that, and people may say it doesn't mean anything. It means everything to people, and particularly as they are working through their own identity, and seeing something like that can even make your day.
Yeah. Heather?
Yeah. I was just remembering that, a few years ago, and this really did start when people started doing this, one of my daughters immediately started doing it as well. And I, at one point, asked her kind of what the significance for her was, like how she saw it. And she's like, I see it as, this is a great way for me to be an ally, because if there are kids, and this was when we were in COVID, right? So everybody was on Zoom. This is how everybody went to school for 2 years. And so they're on these Zooms all day long, and so disconnected from each other physically, right? And she was like, this is a great way for me to let somebody else know that they're not alone, that they have a friend or an ally, or that they, to feel comfortable kind of stepping into their, whomever they are authentically. So I was like, that's such a great answer. And it's always stuck with me, because I was like, yes, that is why we are doing this. And just to be that, it is just a great way, an easy way to be an ally.
I think it is such an easy way, and it means that for those who their pronouns are uncertain, they don't stick out so badly. I've heard of situations where in group meetings they'll go around everyone, no one's using pronouns, but when they hit the trans person, they then ask for pronouns, effectively outing themselves to the group as another. We need to move away from that. You need to make the world more accommodating and welcoming.
Yep.
Speaking of making a world more accommodating, let's think of the future. I think I'm in a pessimistic time in my life after the FINA decision and the anti-LGBT laws that seem to be propping up, don't say gay. So tell me, in 20 years' time, June 2042, how are you going to be celebrating Pride? What's changed and what stayed the same? Charles?
I think of President Obama and the audacity of hope. We are at a crossroads. We are at this point where you look at it and we are going down these decisions where we're losing women's rights that they have over their own body, and having to call out to saying these other things on gay sex, on gay marriage, that these rulings are going to be impacting. And what you hope and have the audacity of hope to say is, will people stand up and vote? Will they bring back, equality? Will they bring back access? Will they bring back, humanity in thinking that, there's not just one definition of who you are as a human being, and there's not one way to be according to any one book. And so can we get back to the founding principles that we are not just a country of immigrants, we are a melting pot, and that every person belongs in that pot. And I want to have that hope that by 2042, we've redirected ourselves and that we are celebrating every vision and every person and the unique self that they bring to this country. That's my hope.
I think that helps us move forward. Really, Heather?
Right. I could not agree more. I think that is such a beautiful way to answer that, because this one I really did think about a lot. And I'm with you, Rochelle. I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. And I thought, I'm going to answer this kind of in the spirit of what I'd like to manifest. So kind of along the same lines, right? I want to 20 years from now live in a world where LGBTQIA person's rights are equal to a straight cisgender person's rights. I want my grandkids to be read stories that all kinds of people and families, about all kinds of, all different kinds of people. I want them to hear language that doesn't assume sexual orientation or gender identity. And I want to get rid of the expectations, like you said, the binary expectations. And just on a kind of more personal, just thinking of, my family and the impact, and this is times a million around the world. I don't want there to be that fear or that shame for anyone as they discover who they are.
I think that word shame really triggers, and that's why we have that need for pride.
Mm-hmm.
For so many of us, the journey has been wrapped around shame, and that is pride is the counterpoint to that. So I think that's a great word to use. And if we can get to a society where shame doesn't exist and we respect each other as humans, I think we will have come a long way in 2042. And hope, I guess, I just hope I'm around to celebrate it.
You better be.
I'm going to ask one question on my pet topic, which is sport. How do you think the governance of sport has the potential to impact on wider community and cultural change? Charles?
Can you give me a little bit more, Rochelle, as far as like a little bit more?
In Australia, we have a real situation where sport is integral to community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think within the sporting culture of Australia, traditionally we've been moving towards a very inclusive environment, and that is starting to hit headwinds.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of the challenges around pride and the challenges around inclusion are being played out in sport, because it's a great place where people can dog whistle without, outright saying that they don't want inclusion.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And I think I'd just like to hear your views on
Mm-hmm.
what sort of role sport can play in the wider community and whether that can drive cultural change.
It's interesting, Rochelle, that when I think of the role sports play, that because it is so widely played, the number of people engaged in it, and in history, how it has impacted every movement, whether that was when Jackie Robinson broke down the racial divide in baseball, and all of a sudden you saw that start the conversation, because you had a whole group of people who said, you should have a separate baseball league for someone of a different color, but then realizing with integration, only good things happen. Only better communities happen. Women not having equal sporting opportunities and until the 70s, and with I apologize, Title 10, I believe it is, that finally putting in foundations to build up that program. And again, a huge community saying no, they shouldn't have that. But every one of these things in sport, it starts with breaking down these lines, LGBTQ players in sports, and realizing it's not a big deal. It's not an issue. These communities come together, these sports teams come together, and when they actually are quote unquote challenged with these integration opportunities, they rise to it and realize there's nothing, there's not a real challenge there, and only good things can happen from a more inclusive environment. So I think that we're similar to the women's movement, racial integration, LGBT or LGBT gay players. Now with the trans issue, I think we're just going through another round of people pushing back on something that they don't understand. And again, going back to Audacity of Hope to say, let's continue this journey where it is becoming more inclusive for people, as they're joining in the sport.
Yeah, I think it's well, listening to you, I was thinking of the powerful symbolism of Jesse Owens at the Berlin Olympics. Is really, that is showing what can be achieved through sport and symbolism. Heather, did you want to add anything to that?
The only thing I thought was thinking that is that it's such a great opportunity for education, and increasing education, because this is such an incredible platform, and these players in all these different sports, they have this platform in which they can share accurate, factual information. So let's use that, because that will just help all of these movements, right? So
I think one of the reasons we got acceptance for marriage equality was because everyone began to know a gay person,
mm-hmm.
and realized that the myths were not there.
Right.
And I think that's why visibility and pride continue to be so very important. We'll change gear now, and just before we wrap up, I'd like to ask each of you one last question. As a member of YPO, what benefits have you and or your family enjoyed by belonging to this community? And what do you think founders, entrepreneurs, and business leaders can gain by belonging to this type of organization? Can you share your thoughts, Charles?
Absolutely. And I have to, it starts with my journey with YPO. I didn't know YPO. I didn't know it existed, 8 years ago. And what I did know, though, was that as a president of a company and a growing company, I felt very isolated and alone. that you have an entire company reporting into and you have your relationships with them. But I did not feel connected to a community of leaders that were presidents of organizations and responsible for that day in, day out leadership of an organization, financial responsibility for an organization. And so I actually just started with a Google search, and I came across YPO and I learned more about it. And I have to say, it not only takes away that feeling of being alone because you can commiserate and connect with other people who are in those positions, it gives you the access to a mind trust of solutions for those problems that come up in your companies or strategies on how to grow your organizations. And I made decisions that I would have never made had it not been for that sounding board and for those voices and for the opportunities within YPO, with the number of conferences that it holds, the number of forums that we are a part of, these small groups. And it meets you where you are as a business leader and creates a community around you of support that will take you and your business to places you didn't know you could get to.
So true. Heather?
So true. Well, I kind of can speak from the spouse position. So I've been a YPO spouse for 17-ish years, and in that kind of in sitting in that place, it's been really cool to watch. Just like Charles said, all of these things that have been available to my husband as a business leader, but then likewise, everything that YPO has available for families, for spouses, for just educational opportunities, no matter what you're interested in. And it's kind of extraordinary. And I, for the first handful of years, I had tiny kids, so I really wasn't, paying attention. But once I started paying attention and realizing, wow, the amount of support and the opportunity to meet people from around the world and connect with people and exchange ideas, just what a special opportunity. So I just have felt very, very, blessed and lucky to be part of this amazing organization.
We have one more viewer's question from Alison. Beyond what YPO is doing now, what more can YPO do to support LGBTQA+ members? Heather, what do you have any further thoughts?
Well, I guess I'm a little clarity. I think in addition
to what we're doing, beyond what YPO is doing now.
Okay, so right now,
I think she's just trying to give us a bigger task list for the sub-network for the next.
I know. I'm thinking, well, we just started this new network and sub-network. We're trying to get some traction there and get some, get people in there, because that's a really, we see that as a really awesome way to educate and a way to engage lots of different people, not just parents of LGBTQ kids, but parents who are LGBTQ, right? And all of us talking together and exchanging ideas. And so I think this is really what we're trying to do right now. In a bigger sense, what can YPO do to support? I honestly do not have a great answer for that. I am really sorry, Charles.
Outside of funding their networks would be a good one.
Yes, that. I go into two different ones for me, Rochelle. Is one, in the room where it happens, not to make a too blatant Hamilton reference, but decisions within YPO and any organization, is there diverse representation at that table? I think that, Rochelle, we have someone that is now joining the international board who is a member of the LGBTQ community, which creates advocacy, creates awareness, creates just an openness, and a visibility that may not have been there previously. So I think, again, not just the LGBTQ community, but who's in that room that's making the decisions for the organization and helping shape what is being done. So, and then I go back to the response I gave previously, that when a YPOer comes in, I have to tell you, they didn't talk about LGBTQ members when I came in. If anything, I freaked them out. They actually had to hold an emergency meeting to figure out how they were going to place me in my forum, because they hadn't had that before. They hadn't had an LGBTQ member in my local chapter. And so I think from that perspective, why is it the first time that they're hearing LGBTQ is when a member is coming in?
Right.
Start that conversation earlier so that they know, and that people, that members of the community know when they're coming in, that it's not just something that's addressed when it comes up, but it's actually something that is discussed, and there's an openness, and that it's already, it just is. So
yeah.
One thing I will say for YPO is that there is an openness to learning. There is an openness for curiosity. As you both know, I've spoken at many chapters around the world. If I can go to places like Kigali and Rwanda and have members listen respectfully and learn from my journey, it really speaks to the curiosity that all YPO members have. They all have their own opinions, and they're generally not shy from sharing them, but it's the openness that really YPO brings to this. And I think it's what can YPO do more? Continue to be open and continue to give us opportunities to share stories. I'll wrap it up now, and thank you both. This has been a most entertaining way to start my morning, start my day, and I hope it's a nice way for you both to end yours. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know by sharing it with your friends, followers, and connections. And don't forget to follow YPO and us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, so that you can be one of the first people to learn about when we do another episode. I'm Rochelle Pattison, and this was YPO Presents Ask the Experts. Thank you all for watching.